Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I've avoided most promotional stuff for this. The only thing I saw was a teaser trailer, and I had a lot of questions. Probably would have gotten a lot of that answered in the trailer, but the full trailer. But obviously, this episode kind of answers the biggest question. Was it kind of felt just based on the teaser like they were taking this in a different direction, and they are. Whereas in the movie, Mr. and Mrs. Smith don't know the truth about each other. They don't find out about, hey, we're both assassins, but they didn't find that out until over the course of the movie. This is like, no, we're starting off with, hey, we both know what this is. We're actually put together in this fake marriage that kind of played a role in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So I thought that's kind of a neat direction to kind of take this story. Because there it's like, oh, we're in love and they got together. I think it's a very interesting take because whereas the original movie is like, hey, we fell in love, but we fell in love with like the fake versions of ourselves. Like how much of that was the real us? I think it's an element of that where it's like, what you think about in retrospect. Whereas this is kind of like, well, we're both not really ourselves. And I think that plays even into this episode, especially when you have John trying to be like, hey, tell me stuff about yourself. And then Jane not being the most sociable person. She does have this thing where she was like even saying at the beginning, like, yeah, I've been accused of having like antisocial tendencies. So I'm like, hey, I'm probably more Jane than I am John in this situation. But I love the awkwardness of it. But like I said, it's kind of that same flavor, but they contextualize and take things in a different direction. I mean, that's why I'm like, the essence of it's there. They're just kind of taking it from a different perspective, and I think it can lead to very interesting story and progression through story. Where it's like oh, we're in love. Oh, we found out the other's a liar. Hey, and we find love again. Whereas this is like, hey, we're complete strangers who don't really know each other. There's something sweet about it, like that. That this is going to be a journey of, hey, we're actually going to get to know each other and actually fall in love with each other. Two people who just kind of got slapped together for unknown reasons to either one of them, finding like something inside of themselves when they're both so alone in the world from their respective situations. Because to be in this situation, they had to burn away their entire lives, and some aspects are a little easier to give up than others. Jane is good to be like, oh, I'm willing to uproot my life. I don't never talk to my dad again. Where do I sign? But John was like, never, not even my mom. Like that, I think speaks volumes. He didn't say dad, he just said mom. So maybe he had a single mom his entire life, and it's like they kind of give you this idea what some of these people are giving up. And once again, Jane made it seem like she was so not bothered by some of the stuff, but she's probably a lot more bothered than she lets on. Like I said, it's a really interesting dynamic. Before I kind of dive even deeper into that, as we kind of talk about the episode more, got to talk about the opening. That kind of caught me off guard. I was like, Isa Gonzalez and Alexander Skarsgård. I was like, what? Because like the moment that intro happened, I was like, there's no way you're going both in the show for a long time. It's like, oh God, you both are about to die. I was on pins and needles the entire time. I'm like, not stray, but a precise bullet is going to come out of nowhere. Ultimately, that ends up being how Alexander Skarsgård's character died, but they are Jane and John. So it's like, yeah. And so I'm like, interesting. So it's kind of like what our Jane and John, what their future is going to end up being. I was like, fascinating. Essentially, that was a couple who kind of left everything behind. It's interesting, too, because later on, Jane had that conversation. What happens if we fail this mission? What if we fail? It's like, and John's like, at our marriage? She's like, no, this mission. He's like, we won't fail. It's like, well, we saw what happens when you do fail. I mean, that was kind of like a combination of you just got tired of it, you fell in love, and you just didn't want to do this job anymore, and they eventually hunted you down. We never got a good look at the people. It did. I was wondering, I'm like, that's not supposed to be like our Jane and John. Like, that's not Donald and Maya. We didn't see the other person from behind. They seemed like they might have had longer hair. That's why I was like wondering if that was supposed to be Maya. But the other person didn't look like Donald, so I'm like, yeah, it's not them. But it's like, I think it's just supposed to be like, this could be your future. Poor John, he caught it hard. Just like out of an, hey, honey, we gotta like lay down suppressing fire. You hear like a crack in like a window or something, and he just stops. And then it's just like, shows like the bullet had entered one side of its face and the other side of its face is blown out. I was Jesus. And she went out guns and blazes because it's like, right, there's no point. Like, because she said it herself, like she was tired of running. And it's just like, right, he's dead now, then fine. Like, I think she probably because she knows there was probably another shooter out there, but she didn't care. It's like, maybe I'll take one of you bastards down with me, but killed her and just left. And we get introduced to the new kind of Jane and John. I mean, for all we know, there's probably multiple. Well, that makes a question. Like, were they brought in to replace the previous Jane and John? That's like, well, now that you're dead, we got to bring in your replacements to kind of fill in the void of work. Or do they have multiple Jane and Johns out there in the world orchestrating, like, unaware? Because our Jane and John have no idea who this company is. Whereas in the movie, it's like, right, they belong to two different organizations. Once again, I don't even remember if they were, like, government agencies. Like, were they, like, one was, like, the CIA and the other one was something. I think they were just straight up two assassin organizations, but maybe there was, like, CIA backing by both. I don't remember what organizations they necessarily worked for. So, like I said, but I remember they distinctly worked for two different ones. Now, in this series, you're making it so they worked for one. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if they're going to do this in the show. It would be interesting if they did, if they made it so that the Mr. and Mrs. Smith movie did happen in this universe years ago, like, because the movie was set in, like, the early 2000s, because the movie came out in 2005. Make it so, like, oh yeah, that actually happened, like, nearly, I'd assume this would be set in, like, 2022, if not 2023. I doubt it's, like, set in, like, 2020. At best, I'd assume, like, it's set in 2022. But maybe it's set in 2023. I don't know. But either way. But you could be like, oh yeah, it happened, like, nearly 20 years ago. You know, you're obviously not going to get Brad and Angelina reprising those roles, obviously. But you can allude to, like, that's canonical in this world, being like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the movie happened. This is a separate end. Or are you just going to be like, nah, like, it's its own thing. Don't even worry about even trying to connect it. I mean, I'd be fine with them doing it either way. I'm really curious to see if they're probably going to be like, no, it's its own thing. It's kind of like a soft reboot of just like, yeah, this is its own thing. There is no correlation or connection to the movie. Maybe there will be. We'll have to wait and see. Only seen the first episode so far, so. But either way, we got those interviews where it's like, oh yeah, you have to hand over your fingernails, tell how old you are, how tall you are, and I love she was like, hey, I'm 5. I think what she said 5'4" if I'm standing up straight, and I love him being like 6 feet. 5'11", which I was like, that's a stereotype about, like, guys, like, no, like a guy who's like almost 6 feet being like, no, you know, yeah, I'm 6 feet. It's like, no, you're not. You're 5'11". You're 5'10" or 5'11" playing 6. You know, but it's like, yeah, with my height privilege of, I'm only, 6'2" or 6'3", maybe. It's like, yeah, it's easy for me to kind of say, no judgment. I just thought that was kind of funny because you hear that come up from time to time of like, yeah, someone who's saying they're 6 feet on a dating app or something apparently is not really 6 feet. They're just like, they're adding 1 or 2 inches to themselves. I just thought that was interesting that he kind of like lied and kind of had to correct himself. So they once again had to leave behind their lives. We kind of got it a little bit. She used to work for the CIA. I forgot why she said, like, she kind of got let go. I don't remember. He got dishonorably discharged from the military. It's actually, once again, it's like, this seems like it's going to be like a dark comedy because there's like, oh, funny stuff to it, but there's some serious stuff, like especially later on when he had this vulnerable moment when he talked about, like, I have killed people before, because he lied to her at the cafe. He's like, I have killed people before, because he said 1 person accidentally, 13 on purpose. But we found out that in Afghanistan, he was one of the first people who did the drone, like, program. Like, he was one of the first drone pilots. And you're like, damn, dude. That's heavy. You know? And I don't know if that has something to do with his discharge in any shape or form. But they're both kind of outcasts in their own ways. They're both awkward human beings, and they're both kind of outcasts, so first time meeting each other is actually in the house where it's like, oh, here's our IDs or bank cards. Oh, here's this cat. Oh, it's interesting that they gave us a cat. It's like, will we really need a pet to play the role of the couple? I really love the reveal where it's like, no, it's actually her cat, especially because she was like so adamant about the name Max. I was like, why are you being so anal about it? And he's like, oh, because she's like, I'm willing to compromise on a lot except for Max. And he's like, oh, Max is your cat. At first I was like, oh, is Max someone important to you? And you're like, I'm sticking with this name because it's something I can hold on to from my previous life. Oh no, it's because you're literally holding on to something from your previous life, that being your cat, Max. Interesting. That's super fascinating. So, but yeah, just them both like it, like I said, it's just like the little things, like when he was cooking himself some eggs and he was about to like wash the dishes, he sees the plate and he's like, interesting, which I love that. I was just like, you could tell like, oh, that's going to be an issue. Oh, that's a relationship issue. It's one of those things, like one of those quirks when you move in with someone too quickly. You're like, oh, I didn't know you were one of those people. But to be fair, he even says like, oh yeah, like I wash my dishes like after I'm finished cooking. Like he washes them like immediately after he's done cooking, and it's like, oh, because you're a military guy. He's like, no, because oh, you're a military boy. He was like, no, I'm a mama's boy. So it's like it's something he got from his mom, which I think also once again plays how important his mom is, because brings her up in that way, but also the whole not even my mom. It's like that's kind of sad, especially if his mom. He might be the only. Who knows if he has any siblings or not? So his mom could just be kind of alone in the world. She's like, yeah, my son just disappeared for no reason. I haven't. That's a lot, dude. But either way, getting into it more, I love that for whatever reason, I guess it's like a little quirk of hers. Like she was watching reality TV. It was specifically Naked and Afraid, and I don't know if she was embarrassed to admit it, because she says later on, it's like, oh yeah, I read myself to sleep. I guess it's like she doesn't want to admit, no, I go to sleep watching reality TV. I'm not going to be specifically just reality TV. I was about to say like trashy reality TV. It's like reality TV's not my cup of tea, so I'm not going to trash it by being like. I mean, because some people will be like, oh yeah, all reality TV's trashy, and it's like I'm not going to delineate between like, oh, Naked and Afraid is not as trashy as blah blah blah. Like once again, I don't care about reality TV at all. So but it's like I think for her, it's just she doesn't maybe too embarrassed to admit, because it's like I don't want to let you know anything about me. So she kept a lot of stuff very like to herself, because like I said, John's the only one that was kind of making a point to try and like learn about her. But I love that he'll ask a question, she's like, yeah, and it's like rarely would she ask it back to him to try and like yeah, you want to know something about me, I'll give you a vague answer, and I won't ask you the question and try to get your response either. It's just like, yeah, I'm not trying to get close to you. So also, like, oh, you're walking around with your t-shirt. He's like, yeah, it was cold downstairs. I mean, it was warmer downstairs. It's colder up here. You must have turned on the air. She's like, no, I didn't. He's like, right. So yeah, I'm gonna go. And it's like, okay. You just like, I love the awkwardness and stuff like that, because he was like, oh, you want a drink? She's like, I'm actually gonna go to bed. He's like, no, I get it. You take the main room. It's like, no, I can take. Just them awkward around each other, and then having that moment when they're like at the cafe, and I don't know, just like the little moments and little bits of conversation between them. And it's just like, once again, it's just so awkward. There's so much dead silence between them in some capacities. And it's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, the last time I was in New York, I was on a trip and I ditched it to go hang out with a friend and a pedophile. And it's like, wait, what? And he even asked her later on, he's like, so that pedophile story, that's not real, right? That was you just fucking with me. And she started giving more details. He's like, I feel like what Buddy Love was his name. I was like, now I feel like you're fucking with me. It's like, yeah, I was there with my friend Dina. And it's like, no, he orders his food, paid for it, and he kind of went on his way, and like we had a laugh about it. It's like, interesting. I also love how that sequence is done, because she's following the lady they're following into a play, and it's like, oh, she has to be quiet, and she can't respond to him through the earpiece. She has to text him, which I thought, like, I love how that was done. I was like, there's actually something really cute about it, especially because she's able to relax a little bit more, because he can't tell her expression. So like, but we saw her like, she smile, like it's not like she doesn't smile or anything at all, but like previously she did, like she has moments of it, but it's like in that moment, like she was able to kind of, I think because they weren't face to face, she was able to kind of talk to him a little bit more, open up a little bit more. And I think considering like, hey, you're leaving behind a whole bunch of your life, and we don't know in the full grand scheme of things how much you're leaving behind, but to be able to kind of be a part of this team and part of this duo, you're going to have to kind of open up a little bit. Because even he was like, come on, I'm trying my best here, kind of like, you got to give me something. So not only were like, first they were at the cafe, then they were at the park, which I love that whole thing of, he's like, right, I can do the dishes, I'm just not going to do the ironing. He's like, yeah, my worst quality is I have to always be right, which I love. That's immediately followed him being completely wrong about the lady they're following, because she's like, oh, like he was like, oh, that could be his son, and she's like, or a boyfriend, and he was like, huh, oh, you were serious. I thought you were joking. No, there's no way. And it turns out it is her boyfriend. And Jane is laughing at him. He's like, go ahead. He's like, no. I can admit wrong. He's like, I'm not. It was just an assumption. I still stand by the assumption. I'm not an asshole. She's like, no, of course not. He's like, I'm not it. He sounds like in that moment, it kind of reminds me of Todd from episode 1 of season 2 of Invincible. I'm not an asshole. I'm not an asshole. It's like, I get it. The more you try to defend yourself, the more because you're kind of think like, oh, why would a young, handsome enough guy be with an older woman like that? That's kind of the vibe you were giving off. So it's, a little presumptuous, not quite very presumptuous, and very asshole-ish. But yeah, like him loiding that and being like, jokingly being like, yeah, I can never be wrong, and then immediately being wrong about that. Granted, he had said that before he said the whole thing about not being wrong. But, I love the whole earpiece thing too, where he tried to put the earpiece in. She's like, "Whoa, I didn't sign up for the romance." He's like, "I'm just trying to put the earpiece." She's like, "Oh no, it's okay." He's like, "Do you want me to not?" "No, it's okay, it's fine." "I mean, you sure you don't want to do?" "No, it's okay, you can do it." It's like, okay, good, you look great. Okay, cool. Because I love how awkward they are, but she ended up picking up a package after she left the play. Well, she got it as she was leaving the play. And it's like, cool. He goes off on his own because John's trying to find a box of similar size so that they could swap them. And calls a whole scene. Jane and her swap boxes. But by the time she realizes that Jane's gone, and they're kind of cracking jokes about it and stuff like that. About like what's in it and stuff like that. Once again, it's like, who do we work for? But it's like, for him, it's like, I don't care. We're getting paid. And then they open up even more to each other because it's like she has nowhere else to go. No one else, no other organization or group or would take her. So this one took her, and he was in the same boat of like, no one would take me either. So this is kind of all we have to. So it's like, yeah, it's like this job. Because he was like, oh, I thought we'd do something a little more spyish. I think of like, oh yeah, lasers involved, guns going off. She's like, oh, they're trying to ease us into it. Yeah. And then they go and drop off the box, and it's like, okay, what's going to be it? What's in it? And it's a cake. I was like, what the fuck? Even they're like, it was a cake, and I was like, the moment they're leaving, I was like, it's a fucking bomb, isn't it? It's a fucking bomb. This is a fucking hit. And then, lo and behold, a couple seconds later, boom. I was like, wow. Because I love it because it's like, it's so unprofessional. They literally have to run away from the crime scene as fast as they can. There's people chasing them because it's like, yo, you're running from the crime scene, and we saw you come in. We probably, like, it's like, what was that all about? We have no idea, so... Love them faking it to get into that restaurant, but like his hand was wounded, so she's like wiped blood on him, and like she's in his arms, like acting like she's dead. They're in the bathroom. They kind of laugh a little bit about it, which is super dark. It's like, oh my god, this is wild, crazy. They're easing us into it, huh? And they can, like, I don't know if that's just kind of like a, oh man, like there's something psychotic about the fact that you could laugh about it, but it's also like stressful of like, holy shit, that went down the way it did. Even later on, like, she had that conversation with him where it's like 30 seconds later, and we would, but he was like, yeah, but that's this job. It's high risk. We both knew that going into this. And I think it's one thing when you know, like, okay, like high risk, like there's a danger involved into it. It's another thing when you realize, like, you were literally 30 seconds away from blowing yourself up. I mean, the fact is they didn't give you any notice of what you were dealing with. I mean, luckily you were careful with the damn box, and even the woman expecting was like, oh yeah, like it's a little damaged. Guess that won't come out of your pay. But it's like, oh, so you think this is a regular cake? I guess that lady was just delivering a cake, which is wild. Which is so interesting because it's like, so was that the lady was going to end up taking it to that house regardless, but I guess it's like, you have that level of disconnect where it's like, okay, it makes it harder to trace back to you, I guess, by like having it be like, because it could be too simple to follow it back to that lady and then trace where the cake came from. But if it's like, there's this disconnect of, oh, this lady was supposed to deliver it and someone stole the cake from her and delivered it. I don't know. Like, it's just, it's a complicated thing. You think you're letting people know ahead of time you're going into a hit. You get them a little more prepared. But I think the whole point is to also be like, no, you follow orders. You don't need to know what's up. We tell you to do something, you do it, no questions asked. I think that's what it's meant to just fully represent, but it's still a thing of kind of give you a little heads up, because it would have been dangerous. Like, oh, like what if we weren't as careful with the box? You knew they would be, because they wouldn't be bumbling idiots and like throw it all around like, oh, what's in the box? She was curious about looking into it, but John was like, nah, it's not worth knowing. We're just supposed to deliver the box. I don't care what's in it. We're getting paid. We got this cushy gig. That's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, they both separated and found both their own ways back home, and laying in bed together and kind of talking was. I thought that was just a really, like I said, like it's just like the elements are just like everything is a little like awkward and a little jokey, and then the moment that house blew up ever since then is like it completely changes the tone of the rest of the episode. Just the what's left of the episode, because it's like what, maybe 10 minutes of the episode left after that, but it's like it changes things like in a lot of ways. Like they were already like opening up a little bit, but opened up even more after that, because it's like, yeah, something crazy like that, almost dying and being responsible for killing, because there was like 9 people that died in that explosion. It's like, yeah, because I can't remember the answer to the. I don't think she ever answered whether or not she's killed people or not. I think only John got. I mean, we didn't both got the same questions. It's like we just never got everyone's response on it. She might have said how many people she killed. I just distinctly remember John's being 13 people on purpose, 1 person by accident. But like that moment where like I said, John opened up about, Afghanistan and drones, and then as he was leaving, Jane opened up by being like, it was Dina's idea to go with the guy with Buddy Love, and I was terrified the entire time. And it's like interesting. It feels like that could be a core aspect of her, where it's just kind of like maybe the way she is now is just that's her way to kind of, she wants to put up a strong front just to kind of hide, like maybe hiding like how she really feels has kind of been there. She's half Japanese, which I'm sure that just like obviously that's playing into like. Well, I guess she is. I guess that would be I guess that's the exact same as Maya's circumstances. Like the actress who plays her, like she, I guess half Scottish and half Japanese. But either way, like maybe my point was like maybe there was something in like the Japanese side of things that kind of made that like Japanese side of the family that kind of made her feel like she needed to be that way. I don't know. But like it's just a great start. Just like I wasn't. Like I said, I just love how awkward it is, and then it's just like shit hit the fan, and it kind of shifts the tone of like their relationship and their dynamic, and the feel of the episode too. But like I said, there's like those little jokey moments still there, but it's still just kind of like I don't know. The switcheroo was just really really interesting. So I'm very very excited to see where the show goes. I obviously avoided the little on this season of type of thing they do at the end of the episodes, especially the first episode. I avoided that. Like I said, I've only seen a teaser, so I'm excited to see in the grand scheme of things like all that goes down in the show, and can see how Jane and John how that relationship and dynamic changes over the course of the show, and what other missions they get. Like once again, this is kind of like the first date, kind of like getting the beginning of this relationship, because once we got introduced to the Smiths in the movie, like they were already together for a while, and once again it's a slightly different, quite different dynamic because of the circumstances of the movie versus what's in the show. But like I said, I'm very very excited to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good